Long ago, before the iron snake came to cut across the land, before the white chalk of strangers touched our rivers, there was a village between the hills and the red soil of the earth. The people of this village were known for their farming, for in those days, a man's strength was measured not by the coins in his pouch, but by the abundance of his barn, the richness of his yam mound, and the laughter of children who never went hungry. In that village lived two brothers, Kofi, the elder, and Obadele, the younger. Kofi was a man of patience and humility. His back bent to the sun each morning, and his hands, though rough with calluses, worked the soil with tenderness, as though the earth was his own child. His farm was not the largest, nor was his house built with shining brass, but year after year, his crops grew tall and strong, his yams fattened like the belly of a calabash, and his maize stood straight like proud soldiers. Obadele, the younger brother, was different. He was a man of restless feet and quick ambition. Wealth had come to him not through sweat of brow but through dealings with traders who passed through the village. He wore cloth dyed in bright colors, his goats were many, his cattle chewed lazily by the river, and his wives adorned themselves with beads and anklets that jingled like rain against the rooftops. The villagers looked at him with respect for his wealth, but some whispered that his heart was clouded with pride. Now, in the way of the world, jealousy is like a fire hidden in dry grass, at first unseen, but when the wind stirs, it burns everything it touches. And so it was that Obadele's heart grew heavy when he saw that, despite his riches, the people sang the praises of his elder brother, Kofi. For when the harvest came, the elders would say, "Look at Kofi's yam. See how the gods have blessed his sweat." And when children were hungry, it was Kofi who opened his barn and gave freely. When widows needed seed for planting, it was Kofi who lent without demanding repayment. Though Obadele had wealth beyond measure, he gave little. His barns were guarded like a miser's chest, and when he gave, it was with the bitterness of one who feared to lose. Kofi, on the other hand, never spoke against his brother. When the villagers praised him, he would say, "Do not forget Obadele, for he is the wealth of our family. His goats and cattle are like the stars, may his hand never dry." He bore no envy, no rivalry in his chest. But Obadele, hearing such words, only grew more restless. One season came when the rains fell true, and the land was generous. Kofi's farm swelled with abundance. His yam tubers were so large that two men struggled to lift one from the earth. His maize cobs burst with white kernels, and his groundnuts filled baskets upon baskets. That year, people from other villages came to see his farm, to marvel at the strength of his crops. They said, "Surely the gods eat with this man. Surely his chi is greater than the rest." And Obadele's heart was pierced like a drum beaten without mercy. He said to himself, "Am I not the younger brother, clothed in wealth, with wives and cattle? Yet they praise Kofi, who owns no cow, whose wife wears no coral beads. What is wealth if the tongues of men call another greater?" He carried this bitterness like a god of poison, sipping from it day after day, until his heart was darkened. His wives noticed it, but they dared not speak. His friends noticed it, but they whispered only in corners. For the heart of a jealous man is like a pot with no lid, the steam always escapes. One night, when the moon was full and the air carried the smell of ripe yam roasting in distant homes, Obadele walked alone. He passed by Kofi's farm, and the sight of the swelling yams gleaming under moonlight twisted his spirit. He clenched his fist and said, "If my brother lives, my shadow will always be smaller. If he breathes, the people will never call me the Great One." And so, like Cain of old, Obadele plotted against his elder brother. The next morning, he went to Kofi's hut and said with a smile that did not touch his eyes, "Brother, the forest has many trees, and I hear the hunters speak of a place where game is plentiful. Come with me, Let us go together, so we may set traps and bring meat for the family. Kofi, who trusted his younger brother as one trusts the right hand, agreed. He said, "Oh, Obadele, you have spoken well. Let us go, for the children will rejoice when they eat meat with their yam." So the two brothers went, carrying cutlasses and snares. They walked into the deep forest, where the trees stood tall and the ground was damp with fallen leaves. The birds sang overhead, and the wind whispered secrets through the branches. But Obadele's heart was not with the hunt. His hand was heavy with evil. When they reached the clearing, he turned to Kofi. Without warning, he struck him with the cutlass, a blow swift and final. Kofi gasped, his eyes wide with sorrow, not anger. He whispered, "Brother, why?" But before the forest could carry his last breath, silence fell. The trees bore witness, the soil drank the blood, and the ancestors turned their faces away in grief. Obadele buried his brother's body beneath the roots of a great iroko tree. He covered the earth and wiped his cutlass clean. Then he returned to the village alone, telling the people, "Alas, my brother was taken by a wild beast. We searched, but we found nothing." The villagers mourned. Women wailed, and the drums spoke sorrow into the night. But in their hearts, some doubted, for Kofi was a man loved by both earth and spirit, and they knew such men are rarely taken by chance. Seasons turned. Without Kofi, the rains grew stubborn, and the earth seemed to mourn. Obadele's wealth multiplied, but his crops withered. His goats grew sick, his cattle wandered, and though he had gold and wives, his barns echoed with emptiness. At night, Obadele could not sleep. He heard footsteps by his door, soft like Kofi's sandals. He heard a voice whispering from the wind, "Brother, why?" The iroko tree in the forest stood tall, but those who passed by swore they heard groans rising from its roots. Children dreamed of a man in white, with soil upon his head, asking for water. Obadele grew lean, his eyes red, his laughter forced. No matter how much he ate, his belly churned. No matter how many wives lay by his side, he felt cold as a man abandoned by fire. One day, a great famine struck the land. The people cried to Obadele, "You are the wealthy one. Open your barns and save us." But when they opened his barns, they found only rot. Rats scattered, gnawing at spoiled yams. His wealth could not feed a single child. The people turned away from him, murmuring, "If Kofi had lived, we would not hunger today." Haunted, desperate, Obadele went to the shrine of the ancestors. He poured libation and cried, "Why do you forsake me? Am I not the son of this land?" The priest, an old man whose eyes seemed to see beyond the living, looked at him long and said, "The earth does not drink blood in silence. You killed your brother, the one who shared your mother's womb. His spirit walks, and the land mourns with him. Until you confess, until the truth is spoken, your shadow will never rest, your wealth will be dust." At first, Obadele denied it. He shouted, "Lies! Lies!" But the more he denied, the heavier his chest became. At night, Kofi's voice came louder, "Brother, why?" At last, unable to bear it, Obadele confessed before the elders. He told of the forest, the cutlass, the grave beneath the iroko tree. The people gasped, some wept, some cursed his name. The elders shook their heads, saying, "Jealousy is the death of kinship. A man who kills his brother kills his own soul." They led the people to the forest, to the roots of the iroko tree. There they dug, and behold, the bones of Kofi lay where Obadele had buried him. But the strange thing was this: from Kofi's bones, yam vines had sprouted. They wound around the root of the iroko, heavy with the fattest tubers anyone had ever seen. The villagers fell silent, then bowed, saying, "Even in death, Kofi feeds us." They carried the yams back to the village, and when they cooked them, the taste was sweeter than honey, softer than milk. As for Obadele, the elders decreed that he would live, but in shame. His wealth was seized and given to widows and orphans. His wives left him. His cattle scattered. He was left to wander the village, a beggar, his name a warning to all. And so the tale is told, that envy is a disease with no cure but ruin, that a man who kills his brother slays himself, and that the earth remembers blood. To this day, when farmers in that land harvest great yams, they say, "May we never be like Obadele. May our hearts be like Kofi, who shared freely and envied no man." For the proverb says, "The lizard that jumped from the high iroko tree said it would praise itself if no one else did, but a man who kills his brother will find no praise, not even from his own shadow." And that is the tale, carried on the wind, told by the fire, remembered by the earth.